Funding for Amish cooking from Quilt Country with Marcia Adams was provided by
Sauter Woodworking, America's furniture craftsman.
And by Marilat Industries, America's cabinet maker, committed to quality and a variety of kitchen and bath cabinetry styles.
Hello and welcome to Amish Cooking. Did you ever wonder why the Amish and Mennonites, who are so passionately committed to a simple, austere lifestyle, make such beautiful quilts? Today I'll try to answer that question for you while I prepare some of the dishes you might find at a quilter's lunch. The Amish are traditionally recognized for their simplicity, yet their quilts are dazzling in both beauty and style. We, who view them from the outside, see just the plainness of their world. But if you put on another pair of glasses, you can see that their life does indeed have color and beauty. Their appreciation of nature, for instance, is intensified, for they rely on it to satisfy their visual sense. Gardens, fields, tidy farms, or even their prized antique dishes, some of which are decorated with flowers. Let's think about those images while I start the first dish, which I call Country Fare Barbecue. Now, this is not your usual sloppy Joe made of hamburger. This is a real meaty sandwich of shredded beef and pork, and typical of the sandwiches that you find at county fairs all over the Midwest and at Mennonite quilt auctions. We'll make the barbecue sauce first. Saute 1 cup of chopped onions in 2 tablespoons of butter, and add to that 1 1/2 cups of meat broth, a cup of ketchup, 1/2 cup of vinegar, cider vinegar incidentally, 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, and a liberal splash of Worcestershire. I'd say a tablespoon plus a teaspoon. And the spices really are what make this fantastic. We're going to add then 2 tablespoons of brown sugar for richness, and 2 teaspoons of celery salt and paprika, and 1/2 teaspoon each of chili powder, cumin, black pepper, and salt. Dump all that in. The meat that we're going to use has been pre-cooked, and start with 2 1/2 pounds of chuck roast and 2 1/2 pounds of pork shoulder. Now, we roasted this in the oven in a couple of quarts of water for about 3 hours, so it's very tender. And then it was put in the food processor and shredded coarsely. Don't shred it too much. You don't want little pieces. I'm going to add this all to this barbecue sauce. How about this? You can see that it's going to be thick and very, very flavorful. Somebody tossed a bay leaf in on me. Very good. Well, element of surprise in cookery all the time. Now we're going to let this simmer for 15 to 30 minutes because you don't want it soppy, because if it's too soppy or wet, the bun's going to get soaked. So you want it medium thick. And since we want to have something to show you what the finished product looks like, we made one earlier. Here it is. Doesn't that look great? And you can see that it is indeed shredded meat. This is not like the barbecue you have in Kansas City at all. That is a big piece of meat that's smoked and roasted for a long, long time. It's another kind of dish, and an absolutely marvelous one, I might add, and we'll talk about it later on. This freezes very well. The Amish pride themselves in preparing good meals for their families. They value hard work and a job well done. Yet I have noted that feelings of pride about oneself are frowned upon in their society. However, they are proud of their quilting, and rightfully so, for it serves as a creative outlet for these women who otherwise don't have many. Their cookery really is a creative outlet for them too, as well, just like it is for us. And throughout the years, they've developed many special recipes. And one of these recipes is chicken corn soup. It's certainly a Pennsylvania Dutch recipe, as you well know, and it's having a comeback. In fact, all of Pennsylvania Dutch cookery is having a comeback, and it's about time. In my bowl earlier, this is what I did. I used chicken fat because it gives great flavor and color. I use 6 tablespoons of rendered chicken fat and sauteed in that 1/4 cup of onion and a cup of celery and 2 tablespoons of carrot. The carrot's for color. And then we added 6 tablespoons of flour and made a roux and simmered it for 6 minutes. And then added 2 cups of very rich chicken broth. Now we're going to finish it up by this. Use canned corn. Most Amish people would have that on hand. This is a 1 pound can of creamed corn and a cup and a half of half and half. Now you could use, if you like, skim milk. I like to be extravagant on these recipes. Use the real thing. And stir this in. The seasonings can be pretty much left up to you, but the Amish would use plain ones. 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg is plenty. And let's add some parsley for color. I have to have parsley. I'm obsessed with parsley, to tell you the truth. We use it by the bushel here. And then let this simmer for 3 to 4 minutes. And then before serving, you want to add the chicken pieces, 1.5 cups of chicken pieces, and it can be from roast chicken or it can be from poached chicken. Let this simmer a while, and I have to wipe my hands. You know, a typical quilting bee at a home involves between 8 and 16 women. 8 women can sit at a frame. The women arrive right after breakfast, and really they're ready to go. They stretch the quilt on the frames, and each woman takes her place, and the quilting begins. Conversation is lively, and everyone has a chance to catch up on the local gossip. And sometimes they exchange recipes like this one for tuna and cream cheese sandwiches. Begin with 8 ounces of cream cheese and have it softened. And to this, we're going to add 1/2 cup of mayonnaise and 1 can of tuna. Now this can either be water-packed or it can be oil-packed. I generally use the water-packed. It's a good product. And 1/2 cup of very finely chopped black olives. It's getting better all the time, isn't it? And 1/2 cup of toasted pecans, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and a liberal amount of black pepper. Boy, that was a mess. And then we're going to just beat it quickly. I have no current. Well, pretend that I beat it by hand. Imagine I absolutely have to beat something by hand. We get spoiled. I'm going to do it the Amish way, for goodness sake. Just beat this up by hand. It's really quick. This really shows, doesn't it, how dependent we get on electricity. That's one problem the Amish never have. That's one reason, too, I might add, that they don't get fat while they eat this food. This needs to chill a while before you spread it, because it's really very, very soft. And I'm going to use dark bread today, and you'll notice that it's buttered. And this will keep the sandwich filling from soaking in. And butter it clear to the edges. Doesn't this look good? When the Amish women come together to quilt, the hostess does the hot dish, and that is called the hot. And then her friends bring in the colds. Isn't that fun? That would, of course, include Jello salads or perhaps macaroni salad, kidney bean salad. And I find this a very good filling for afternoon tea sandwich as well. Don't forget about this recipe. It's nice for Saturday lunches during the summer. And isn't this an attractive flower pattern dish? This particular flower actually looks like the quilt pattern, garden maze. This lovely dish reminds me of some I saw at Rebecca Haar's house. Rebecca is a noted Amish quilt collector who's also interested in Amish folklore. She grew up in the Shipshewana area and is from a Mennonite family. She showed me her fine collection of antique Amish dishes. Rebecca, thank you so much for having us at your house today. Tell me about this cupboard.
Well, this is the cupboard where the everyday dishes are kept. Most Amish and Mennonite families have 2 cupboards. This cupboard in here has the better dishes. Here in this beautiful red cupboard, built about 1850, we find a collection of family dishes passed down from one generation to another. This little cup here has a note inside written by a mother to her daughter in 1963. She says, "Alpha shall have this set of dishes when I am gone, Mom." It was Grandma Wyrick's set. It must be about 85 years old by now. Love, Mother.
That's very touching, very touching.
Those are the kinds of pieces that we find in an Amish or Mennonite special dish cupboard. And you can see by the color in here of the dishes that there is admiration for designs from nature, floral designs, that are even shown in pin cushions and other specialty items that would have been given as gifts from friends. This is a lidded compote that would have been set on the Amish wedding table in the 1820s and perhaps earlier.
I have one of these at home that belonged to my grandmother, and I assume it has a similar story. What's in this quart jar? It looks like cookies and candy.
Well, that jar was found in the cupboard of a very old Amish grandmother, and it had belonged to her mother. What it is a collection of old cookies and candies that were saved from a Christmas very long time ago.
Marvelous, marvelous. There's candy canes even in it.
Right.
Charming. And tell me about this beautiful dish. You have quite a few of these.
Well, all of these patterns are, again, as I said before, patterns from nature, and they're very brightly painted by hand. These kinds of plates were very popular among the Pennsylvania Dutch. So that includes the Amish in Indiana, too.
Well, now the same pattern keeps showing up in other decorative arts of the Amish.
That's right. It's the love of flowers, both because they are from nature and because they are so beautiful. We can even see that similar patterns in quilt making are put into the quilt.
Right here.
Right. Here we have a tulip pattern.
Which probably the viewer can't see, but trust me, it is there.
And it's floral patterns such as these that come into the quilting designs and the dishes that are like the flower gardens coming into the lives inside of the Amish woman and her family.
Here is my grandmother's compote, which I use for serving trifle, cranberry sauce at Thanksgiving, a flower vase, maybe with lilacs, and today it's filled with potpourri. It's spiced with cloves. That's a great one. Another recipe that dates back to my grandmother's time is lemon grape-nut pudding, and you might find this served at an Amish quilting bee today. I've always loved this pudding. It has a cake-like top layer, a slightly crunchy middle layer of grape nuts, which are almost unidentifiable when it's in your mouth, and the third and bottom layer is a very smooth and tart lemony pudding. We cream together 1/4 of a cup of soft butter and a teaspoon. This worked while we were at Rebecca Haar's house. I think somebody came and paid the bill. A teaspoon of grated lemon rind and a cup of granulated sugar. Give this a good whisk. Actually, you could make this by hand if this electricity wasn't on. And then add 2 beaten egg yolks. And 2 tablespoons of flour. That's going to be your cake layer. And 1/4 cup of grape nuts. Now the Amish would have made their own homemade grape nuts, and that recipe is in the cookbook. And then, of course, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Give this another quick. And 1 cup of milk. You could use skim milk if you want to. And mix it well. And to that, we're going to add these 2 beaten egg whites. We'll just combine a few like this first to sort of get it started. We want to, you see, get this mixture sort of equal in density. And then pour the whole shebang together. This is also like lemon sponge pie, incidentally. And We should make that sometime on this show because it does the same thing. The cake comes to the top and the lovely lemon batter stays on the bottom. Now see these white patches of egg white? That's just exactly the way it's supposed to be. Then pour this into a 5-cup buttered souffle dish and bake this at 325 degrees for an hour and 15 minutes in a pan of hot water. And when it's finished, it has this lovely cake-like layer that I told you about. See, there it is. And it does shrink away from the side of the dish, and that's the way it's supposed to do. Let's see how the soup is doing. Does smell yummy today. Looks yummy too. You know, the history of quilting absolutely fascinates me. It's been around for centuries, and there are records of it appearing before Christ in Egypt, China, and India. The insulation value of these 3 layers of quilting in the fabric was learned early. The Crusaders wore it under their armor when they returned to England from the Crusades. Isn't that a great story? I can just see this Crusader striding into his wife's kitchen saying, "Tabitha, look what I got at the bazaar in Peking, quilts." It does help put the art of quilting into a historical perspective. My next recipe is called 6-week Bran Muffins, which I first ate at a bed and breakfast outside of Shipshewana, Indiana. I have loved those muffins that I ate there ever since, and I keep them on hand most all the time. The advantage is that the batter lasts for 6 weeks under refrigeration. I don't think it will really last 6 weeks because you're going to eat it up long before 6 weeks, but it's wonderful for entertaining. Here in my bowl, we've combined, and also on my tummy, 5 cups of flour, 5 teaspoons of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 2 teaspoons of allspice. And to this, we're going to add a 15-ounce box of Raisin Bran. Do use your biggest bowl because this makes an enormous amount, but as long as you're messing up a bowl, make it a big bowl. And 3 cups of granulated sugar. And stir this up very quickly. Also, at this bed and breakfast with these muffins, they serve a tray of Amish cheese called Amish sausage. Over the top, we're going to pour a mixture, which has been all mixed together very well. 4 beaten eggs, 1 cup of vegetable oil, 1 quart of buttermilk, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now stir this up very well. At this point, it's quite runny, but it sits up in the refrigerator. I'd like to change the subject for a moment and go back to quilting. That's just like one does at home, isn't it? You cook a while, then you talk a while. Cooking has been, cooking has been too. Quilting has been called a salvage art, and that's a very appropriate term. Small bits and pieces from other sewing projects are used up in quilt making, as we know. To waste anything is considered irresponsible by the Amish and the Mennonites. The Amish quilts, such as we always have on this show, have a special quality in today's world because it's nearly impossible to acquire the same fabrics and dyes used in the antique Amish quilts made around the turn of the century. There we are. Originally, the natural fibers were dyed at home with natural pigments, and they produced a warm but vibrant look, quite unattainable in modern fabrics, especially the synthetics. The techniques are passed from generation to generation, as are many of their recipes. To finish up the muffins, preheat your oven to 375 degrees and fill your muffin tins about half full and bake them for just 20 minutes. Not only are these muffins good at a quilter's lunch, they're also good for an afternoon snack. And my sons used to come home and dip out this batter and make their own muffins the minute they hit the house. And you could be good to yourself, you know, and make your own self a muffin. I want to caution you, however, about one thing. Pour the batter to a tall plastic container and date it. And then, as you dip out the muffins, be sure not to re-stir the batter. The action between the buttermilk and the soda would be lost, and you'd have flat muffins. And you certainly do not want flat muffins or flat anything else. Let's clean up a bit before we review what we've done today. As usual, I've trashed the kitchen. There. We started with County Fair barbecue. And it's a wonderful, zesty dish, heavily spiced with cumin and paprika. It's not for wimps. We're going to put it in this dark rye bun. This is a good sandwich. And I think that we will garnish it with some potato chips, a lot of them. These, of course, are Amish potato chips, and they're absolutely delicious. And some pickle for garnish. To give it a little bit of color, we'll tuck under a bit of a kale leaf. The chicken soup has perked along just the way it's supposed to. I like it in this green bowl. Majolica is a Victorian sort of art form in dishes, and it's coming back into style. I'm glad about that because it adds a lot of texture to a table setting. This is a country soup, of course, with a very pleasing texture and flavor. You'll notice this blue service plate. These come out of the Edwardian period, though this certainly wasn't an Edwardian piece, and they were used at formal dinners under all of the table service. If you find any in any antique stores, grab them. Next, we did the tuna and cream cheese sandwiches. Not only nice for lunch, but the mixture makes a beguiling afternoon tea sandwich. And it's an exceedingly simple recipe. Goodness knows we don't have enough of those. And the lemon grape-nut pudding. You'll notice, of course, the layers in the compote dish of the cake and the grape nuts and the lovely, lovely tangy pudding. I like to serve this with cream poured over the top. It's a luscious dessert. And lastly, the scrumptious 6-week Bran Muffins. I'm frequently enchanted by the names the Amish women give their quilt patterns. The one we have today is called a star and a goosefoot, and you can certainly see why. And there's an element of surprise in our quilt today, and I'll share that with you later. This quilt was made by Sarah Miller Troyer for her daughter, Ella Troyer Schmucker, in 1935. And it's valued at $1,400. It's in nearly perfect condition. It's not uncommon for an Amish bride to have 6 or 7 quilts already made by the time she marries. And generally, some of them will have been made for her by her mother. That's truly a gift of love, isn't it? Now here is the surprise. The color contrasts on these two sides are simply astonishing to me. When I opened up the box and pulled out this quilt, I couldn't believe it. Yellow appears mostly in Midwestern quilts, never in Pennsylvania quilts. Again, the pattern is chosen from a form and a term that the Amish woman would know. All of our quilts are lent to us by the Indiana State Museum in Indianapolis, Indiana, and they have an enormous collection of quilts, over 500, and a lot of other pieces of fiber art that are related to Amish lifestyle. Be sure to see it when you're in Indianapolis, or really it's worth the trip. So, until next time, ess a gut, eat good.
All recipes seen in this series are available in Marcia Adams' book, Cooking from Quilt Country. This hardcover contains nearly 200 Amish and Mennonite recipes with color photographs and descriptions of the food and folkways of America's heartland. The cost of the book is $24.95 plus handling. Please have your credit card ready when you call 1-800-325-2667. Series 2 of Amish Cooking from Quilt Country is available on home video for $59.95 plus shipping. All 13 programs in this second series are compiled on 3 VHS cassettes. Call 1-800-325-2667 for credit card orders.